Ladysmith Light Up was totally memorable. What everybody else remembered was the parade, the marching band, Santa, the lights, the crowd, the tree. What I remember is seeing the city slicker give me a death stare while the black leather guy punched out Chris on the steps of the Ag Hall. And all because Bryce gave Mary Lou a music box to give to Kaylee and Chris wants it back? It doesn't make any sense, but it looks like it's getting nasty. On the drive back, Mary Lou and Frankie got the part of the story anyway out of Bryce, and they came up with a simple solution that should close the whole thing down. Myself, I don't think it's going to be that easy, but I hope to hell it is. When we got back to the hotel, Mary Lou led the whole group up to the reception desk and asked Leo to phone Chris's room and tell him we had something to give him. When Leo said there was no Chris registered at the hotel, May elbowed her way to the front of the group and held up her phone. "This guy." "Oh," said Leo, "that's David Hartley in 206. "Well, call him up," said Mary Lou, "and tell him we have something to give him." When there was no answer, Mary Lou made Leo promise that he would call their room as soon as David Hartley came in, no matter what time. Then Mary Lou asked for a cot for their room for Bryce, and Bryce says no way he can sit up in the lobby. And then Leo says he can have a room of his own in the same wing as us. And then Frankie settled the whole thing by telling Bryce that he could not stay up all night in the lobby, and he could have his own room if he promised that he would stay in it until we came to get him to return the music box. Bryce sullenly agreed, but I didn't trust him. Then Mary Lou turns to Jude and I and says, "If the two of you would go with us, that should be sufficient." That's because she doesn't know about the leather guys, I thought. And she also has no idea how bad Jude is at judging dangerous situations. Jude thinks she can handle anything. I was just trying to think of something to stop this, and Jude said, "We do it." Well, I didn't want to get in a fight with Jude in front of the penny pincher, so I shut my mouth. Leo handed Bryce a card key, and we went down to the ground floor. Mary Lou and Frankie watched Bryce open up his room, and Mary Lou said to him, "Promise me you will be here when we come to get you." Yeah, he says. And then Frankie asks him, when you left the note in our room, did you search it?" "No," said Bryce, "I couldn't get in. That's why I shoved it under the door." "Thank you," said Frankie. "Oh, charming," I thought. That means somebody else is breaking into our rooms. I couldn't face Jude without cheesies. I went to the vending machine. So far this trip had been weird, and it looked like it was due to some teenage screw-up. But these leather guys were a whole different kettle of fish. They beat people up. And since I didn't know why, I wasn't sure it couldn't happen to us. This trip was maybe getting dangerous, and I needed Jude to take it more seriously. I needed to tell her about the leather guy, but I didn't want her putting it in her damn painting. I got a bag of Hawkins cheesies. I put the biggest one in my mouth and crunched down on it. The crunching sound inside my head gave me an image of the leather guys beating up old ladies. I shook my head and took off for our room. Jude was already in bed, propped up on pillows, doodling in her notebook. "So what did you think of Bryce's story?" she asked me. "Ha! I think he stole that music box. I just can't figure out from who. And why is this Chris guy going to so much trouble to get it?" "Good question," I said, "but I don't think we should be asking it. Don't be rushing in. Let me tell you what I saw at the Egg Hall after the parade." "So what's the story?" said Jude when I'd finished filling her in. "Is this Chris guy and the leather, are they friends or enemies?" "No idea. But Jude, those guys look seriously dangerous. I'm getting seriously worried. We don't even know they're after us. They're after Chris." "Well, yeah, but another thing. I believe Bryce when he said that he didn't search Mary Lou and Frankie's room. So that means it was either Chris or it could have been the leather guys. That's a lot of trouble for a music box." "You're right," said Jude, rolling out of bed and putting on her robe and slippers. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to go look at that blessed box." Oh crap, I thought, this is just what we need. I ran after her. She got Leo to let us into the storage room, and she took the blanket off and tore into the Christmas wrapping, and then she got the bubble wrap off, and what we were looking at was a box in some rich burled wood with inlaid white roses, angels, and stars on the side and the bottom. Not the bottom, but the top. Anyway, so she turned the key and it played a tune with bells, chimes, and drums. She lifted the lid and a nativity scene appeared. Clearly, it was a working music box. She turned it over and said, if I was gonna hide drugs in this thing, I would put it in the case. She ran her fingers around the 4 screws and said, "Do you got your Swiss Army knife?" I reached in my pocket and I handed it out to her. So she picked the Phillips screwdriver and she attacked the screws. "Careful, don't strip them. Don't worry," she said. "If I find drugs, this whole shooting match goes to the RCMP and nobody will care. If I don't, I'll screw it back together and nobody will know." When she got the screws out, I went to help her turn the box right side up and our heads knocked. "What are you doing?" she shouted. "Well, I'm trying to help you turn the box over carefully so we don't damage it." "Well, you're not helping. Stand back, I got this." She lifted up the burled case. The mechanical work sat on the base. I couldn't see anything that looked like drugs. Jude turned the case over and ran her hand around the inside. Nothing. The two of us stood and looked at it. "Okay, the guy's a music lover. I'll put it back together and we can go to bed." There was one more thing I wanted to do. I looked around the storage room. I spotted the overnight bag. I went over to it and unzipped it. It was stuffed full of crumpled newspapers. I even found the price tag from the Marina store in the bottom. "This bag is empty," I said. "He did it just to get a look in here. I'm heavily betting that he's the one who went through our luggage." "But why?" said Jude. Now if I can just get these 4 little screw holes to line up. When she got the screws in, we gave the music box to Leo and he said he'd rewrap it. We thanked him and went back to our room. I don't know if this goes in the painting where something is missing or in the painting where something disappeared. "Forget the painting," I said. "This is not some artsy-fartsy project. There's some real danger here somewhere." "Oh, don't get your panties in a twist, Mavis. This Chris David guy is gonna come back to the hotel. We're gonna go with Bryce and give him the music box, and that should clear up the whole mess. I don't know what the leather guy's beef with Chris is, but I can't see them beating up a bunch of old ladies. Don't be such a worrier." "Well, what about Bunny and Irene?" I said. I was not about to give up worrying on her account. "Tomorrow, Mavis. Tomorrow is another day." Well, tomorrow dawned. I had such a hangover and I hadn't been drinking. Broken lift, missing jewelry, disappearing clients, boss's mother, the leather guy, the death stare, boxcars colliding in a train wreck. I cautiously opened my eyes. It was just a hotel room. I was safe in bed. I looked over at Jude's bed. It was empty. "Oh, now where's she gone?" I thought. I threw my legs over the side and staggered into the bathroom. First things first, then I'd look for Jude. I heard our door open and shut. "Mavis?" I rushed out of the bathroom. "Where the hell have you been?" "I went to get coffee and donuts." "Oh, thanks. Especially since you don't like donuts." I got myself a muffin. Sounds healthy. Probably not. Carolyn brought them from Timmy's and Duncan. Good news. Irene and Bunny came back and they're safely tucked up in bed. Someday when I have a spare moment, I'm going to think up something really nasty to scare those two to death, I said, as I stomped into the bathroom. When I came out, I was much calmer. Jude had opened the drapes and set the goodies on the table in front of the patio door so we could look out at the water. The cloud cover was very low. Sunrise had happened. In the east, a thin line of brilliant gold radiated from the crack between the dark green of the forest and the dense gray of the clouds. The herons was standing on the piling, the same piling it had been standing on yesterday. I think now it was kind of trying to get a nit out from under its wing. The gold line faded as I watched, leaving behind a cold, dull day. I sat down at the table and surveyed the donuts. Double chocolate and honey cruller, where to begin? I went with the cruller. Jude took a swig of her tea and proceeded to fill me in on what she'd found out on her roam around. The Chris David guy never came back. Bryce hadn't done a runner. Mary Lou had Leo check on him, so we were still stuck with the damn box. Irene and Bunny were back. They'd arrived by separate taxis after midnight. Neither of them would say where they'd been, and the taxi company wasn't talking. It occurs to me, Mavis, that we don't really need to know where they go. As long as they show up every night and show up to take the ferry back to Vancouver, why do we care? Really? I had no idea who she was channeling now. Some ninny. Look, Jude, this trip is getting totally weird. Not only do we have those two old biddies popping in and out, but we got Bryce being chased by Chris David or whatever, and these leather guys who are totally scary. We need to keep together. Oh, Mavis, I think you're making too big a deal out of a chain of jerks. It's all gonna clear up when we give the music box to what's-his-name. Yeah, but we don't know when that's gonna happen, and a lot of mayhem could happen in the meantime. Well, if it makes you feel any better, I'll go talk to Bunny about staying with the group. Well, actually, Frida was gonna talk to her, and it's probably better coming from Frida. So I could go and ask Frida what happened. That's a good idea, Jude said. You go talk to Frida about Bunny, and I'll go talk to the Heron. You could make yourself useful by tracking down Irene before she disappears. Not gonna happen, Mavis. When I get home, I'll put her in a painting. Midnight black and alizarin crimson are her colors. I hope the Heron poops on you, I said to her, retreating back. Then I went down to Frida's room. She had just showered and she looked like a piece of boiled spaghetti. But she said she could always talk. So I told her my theory about Bunny skipping out of things that she couldn't pay for. And Frida said that was a good guess, except for the fact that just that morning, Bunny had paid the entire amount of the check in cash. But she did agree there was something going on with Bunny. She hides when she's in trouble, she said. That's why I went so early to her room, so I could nail her before she made herself scarce. She fed me some line about going into Duncan to shop and asking Mary Lou to tell the group where she was. I think she was counting on Mary Lou to forget. Well, it sounds like you don't really trust Bunny, I said. Well, she's a dear friend. I trust her with my life, but I can't trust her to tell me the truth when she's in trouble. And another thing, when we go for coffee, she stands at the register and counts out change. Since when does she have several $100s in her purse that she can just hand over? Well, I had to admit that was strange. So then Frida wanted to go down to Mary Lou and Frankie's room and see what was going on there. On the way down the hall, I filled her in on the still missing Chris and the reappearing Irene and Bunny. We got there just as Mary Lou got off the phone with Bryce's mother. It turns out that our young man had not been entirely truthful. As Frankie pointed out, leaving a message on a machine when you know your mother's not going to be there does not actually constitute permission. Angela, Bryce's mother, wanted us to keep him with us until we got back to Vancouver and she'd deal with him then. Well, I was doubtful. I mean, the guy's 17. He's already disappeared 3 times. What is going to make him stay with a bunch of old ladies who are going to go to dinner theater to see Little Women and then go to the Butchart Gardens to see The Magic of Christmas? Mary Lou said she talked to him. Frankie said he'd just hand her a line of hooey. Frida suggested that maybe we should keep the box until just before he could take it to give it back to Chris. That way he wouldn't bolt. I said, wait a minute. I saw the 2 guys chasing Chris, and they did not look friendly, and they did not look incompetent. If we keep the box, we could be in danger. Then Mary Lou apologized for having the group get involved in some mess that was created by her great-grandson. I said maybe it was time to go to the RCMP, but Frankie thought that Bryce would bolt for sure. Then Frida suggested that we get Bryce to tell Chris that we had given it to the cops, but Mary Lou was afraid that that would put Bryce in danger. We finally agreed that we would keep the box until just before Bryce goes to give it back to Chris. Then Mary Lou panicked and thought that he might just grab the box and run off with it. Frida had a fix for that. She said, we can put the music box in the bottom of the bag on the back of my chair, and I can cover it with Depends. It's never out of my sight, and I can guarantee that Bryce is not gonna rifle through a bunch of incontinence panties, especially if Raven is with me. As for keeping Bryce after the music box was returned, well, we still didn't know what the leather guys were up to. Can you believe we did all that before breakfast? I was starving. Mary Lou and Frankie went off to tell Bryce what was gonna happen. Frida, Raven, and I went over to the rock cod. We found May and Jude just as their breakfast arrived. Irene was in the other section reading the news leader. I ordered breakfast and filled Jude in on the latest plan for the traveling music box. She thought keeping the box from Bryce was overkill. Did I care? Not bloody likely. After we'd eaten, Jude handed me the keys to the bus and said it was my turn to drive and the bus needed to be gassed up. Oh, said May, are you going into Duncan? Can you take me with you? I regret that I didn't buy the amber earrings yesterday. They would be perfect for my aunt. So I dropped May at the gift store and I went on to the gas station. And there was a line at the register to pay, so I kind of browsed the candy aisle while I was waiting. When I got back to the gift store, May was standing on the curb. She had a gift store bag in one hand and something small that she was rubbing in her other hand, and she was frowning. I drove up beside her and opened the door. It turns out she was worried because she'd found Bunny's lucky troll on the sidewalk in front of the gift store. When I pointed out that there must be thousands of those things, she told me that this one had a cigarette burn on the foot from when her and Bunny played bingo years ago. At first, Bunny was mad at her because she'd burned her troll, and then Bunny won $500 and decided that the burn was lucky. So that's how this troll became her favorite troll. Maybe she's taking it with her to look for her ring, May said. Is she looking for a ring? May told me that when Bunny finally arrived last night, May asked her where she had disappeared to, and Bunny told her that she had a lead on her ring, but she didn't want to say anything until she knew for sure. She must still be looking, said May, because it rained overnight and this troll is dry. She must have dropped it this morning. I knew this was not the story that Bunny had told Frida, but I didn't mention that to May. But I did think I would have to mention it to Frida because maybe she did have to worry about Bunny. When I told Frida what May told me that Bunny told her, Frida said, if Bunny is lying to May, she must really be in bad trouble. I'm gonna have to think about what to do. Then she told me we had to change our itinerary. Because we were behind schedule, we couldn't take the scenic route to Chemainus. We'd have to take the Trans-Canada. And so we'd have time to do the mural tour before the dinner at the theater. I found Jude sitting cross-legged on her bed, scribbling furiously with magic markers. I'm trying to get Irene to emerge, she said. I said, try driving taxi. After a bit of a lay down and 2 bags of cheesies, I went out and did the safety check and brought the bus around to the front deck entrance. The elevator doors opened and Frankie and Mary Lou came out. May was moving quite slowly because she didn't have her poles. Mary Lou came ahead and got on the bus. You should know, she said, that Mary Lou has talked to Raven about letting Bryce help her. Lord knows the woman doesn't need any help, but Bryce needs a reason to be seen with a bunch of old ladies. Also, we thought it best if Bryce didn't know that Frida has the music box. So please tell Jude not to spill the beans. Gotcha, I said. May, coming up the stairs, said, what's going on? Frankie took her hand and said, "Come sit with me and I'll tell you." Raven and Frida came out to get on the bus with Bryce slouching along behind them. I noticed that they changed the bag on the back of her chair. This one was larger and it had a cover that went over the top and snapped. Sure enough, between the bag and the cover there was a gap, and I could see the bag was stuffed with incontinence panties. Raven and Frida went to the back lift door. Bryce came up the front door and looked around for an empty seat. Frankie said to me, "Mavis, don't you want to talk to Jude about that back tire?" It was on the tip of my tongue to say, "What back tire?" when I remembered the music box secret. I got up and went around to the back of the bus. "Jude, come take a look at this, will you? I think this tire might need air." Jude gave me a dubious look and followed me around to the other side of the bus. I leaned over the back tire and said, "Bryce doesn't know that Frida has the music box, so don't tell him." "Right," she said. I'm beginning to understand why Amaryllis doesn't paint people. When Bunny and Irene failed to appear by 4:15, Frida gave the order to leave without them. Frida spoke over the engine noise. On our way past the desk, we checked again to see if that guy came back. "They don't think he's going to," Raven said. "Carolyn said all the maids found in his room were shaving things that he could have got from the vending machine." "Well, has he checked out yet?" I asked. "No, they've heard nothing from him." "Well, let's forget the whole thing and go have some fun."